Alright, here's a short, at least hopefully it's short, video on connecting old vintage turntables to amplifiers. I actually had a comment from one of the viewers of a video that I had made on this old dual 1019 turntable, and he wanted to hook it up. He said he's got one and he wanted to hook it up. The turntable works, but he wasn't sure how to connect it, and didn't have a lot of experience with audio electronics, vintage audio electronics. So rather than typing out a long response to his comment, I thought I'd just make a quick video and post it up. And I figured if one person has a question, maybe there's several others out there that do also. And I discovered this by posting a video years ago for my daughter to replace a car part on her car, and I was just going to put it up for a couple days, let her view it and take it back down, but that video started getting more hits. It's one of my most popular videos now with thousands of hits, so there's a lesson learned. So anyway, this is a vintage turntable from the 70s. It's a dual 1237. I've got about 3 of these. And the way you would normally hook it up, let's get right to it, is you've got cables coming out the back with RCA jacks. You just look for the phono input on your amplifier. You plug the red into the right, I'm going to put the white into the left, red into the right, and there we go. Now you also have this funny little wire coming out the back too, and this is the ground wire. So any amplifier that has a phono input will also have a ground connection somewhere. So you find that and hook this up to the ground connection. If you don't do that, you'll get kind of a buzz, loud buzz, or from the turntable, or when you select the phono input. So if you hear that, make sure your ground is connected properly. And that's pretty much it, at least on vintage equipment. Now if you get to something a little bit more modern, like this Sony, and this was made in probably 2000 something. I think it actually says right there October. I can't read it, but maybe you can on the video. Anyway, it's from the 2000s, and you will notice it's got all these inputs on the back, but none of them are labeled phono, because they figured back probably in the 90s that records were gone and you'd have CDs and these other inputs, but you wouldn't need a phono input. So they took them off of amplifiers. Now, I understand the most recent version of this has added a phono input back in because of the resurgence of popularity of vinyl. Now what the phono input does is, well, let me explain a little bit. Most of these inputs are all designed to be line level, which is about 1 volt AC plus or minus. So everything that you'd hooked up, like tape players, a CD player, video input, all these things have line level audio coming out of them, but not a vintage turntable. Vintage turntable just picks up a very small signal from the cartridge, and it's, I don't remember, maybe 20 millivolts, much less than 1 volt. And that's what comes out the wires, and that's what plugs into the phono input. And that's why you need a special input, because it's going to amplify much more than these other inputs. It also does something called RIAA curve correction. In order to get the music or more music on a disc, they suppress the bass notes and increase the volume of the treble notes, just to help with reducing noise and to get more music in the grooves, and so that your needle doesn't pop out, because the bass notes would make it jump out if it were recorded without that correction. So there you go, the record's made, you start playing it, but you need to remove that correction, and that's what the phono input also does, is it does the inverse RIAA curve correction, which then boosts the bass notes back up, suppresses the treble notes, and makes it sound like the original recording. So two things that the Phono amp does. So now what happens if you're using a modern amplifier and it doesn't have a Phono input? Well, all is not lost. There's what we have here. Here's one that I've been using before. This is from a company called Shit Audio, and it's the Manny external preamp for Phono preamp. And it does a number of things in addition to that, as it has some adjustments down here where you can correct for volume, and there's a special high-end type of Phono cartridge called what's it, moving coil, which plays at even lower volume than the standard moving magnet cartridges. So you can use these switches to play either modern or use moving magnet or moving coil cartridges. So that's why I have that. So this costs about $130. So if you're using a modern amplifier that doesn't have a Phono preamp and you want to use a vintage phonograph, this will make that happen. Now on even more modern turntables, they have a built-in preamp and switch selectable whether you want to use it or not. From what I've heard, the quality of those aren't very good, so you're better off disabling that and using a built-in Phono preamp or an external. You get better sound, because these turntables, the modern ones, are selling for less than $100 for some of them, so they're not going to put a whole lot of money into making a nice preamp, you know, where this preamp itself is over $100. So now one more thing too is the viewer said he was looking for his cartridge and head shell off of his Dual 1019. So here's what it looks like. It's a black piece of plastic, and this has a modern Ortofon 2M red cartridge on it, but if yours is vintage, it'll have something different than that. But that's what you're looking for, so hopefully you find that. So that's it. Hopefully this video will help not only the one viewer, but other people as well. And this is how you connect your vintage turntables up to vintage and non-vintage amplifiers. Good luck!